Hello, world history students. This is Mrs. Politsky, and I have your notes for chapter 34, talking about the new era in Latin America. Section 4. Here we go. All right. In number one, two factors that were the most important in creating Mexico's debt crisis from the 1970s into the 1990s was Mexico's reliance on a one factor economy, basically the oil industry, for its income, and in its inability also to repay some of its foreign loans. In more recent times, Mexican President Ernesto Cedillo Ponce de Leon, who was forced to drastically devalue the peso in order to save Mexico from economic disaster by negotiating emergency loans from the United States. Democracy in Mexico also changed in recent years because of the non PRI president, Vicente Fox, was elected to office in the year 2000. In Mexico, just so you know, presidents usually serve only a 1 year term that is roughly 6 years long. And in Vicente Fox's time as president, he signed NAFTA, but he also was a man who knew a lot about foreign business. He had been the chairman of Coca Cola for Latin America for many years prior to running for office. And number four, the purpose of NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, was and is to improve the economies of Canada, Mexico, and the United States by limiting tariffs or becoming basically a free trade zone between the three nations. From 1929 until the present, Mexico has been ruled by members of the PRI, which is sometimes known as the Institutionalized Revolutionary Party. This goes back to a period of time in Mexico when there was a lot of instability. If you go back prior to basically the 1920s, you had a series of revolutions and protests that were happening, including guys like Pancho Villa and such. So when this party came to power, things kind of, I guess you could say, became stabilized. And number six, the PRI retained control over Mexico's government through some fraudulent elections, the use of force, and they also bought some of the votes, which sounds pretty bad, but when you talk about corruption in other parts of the world, that probably seems rather par for the course. Before the Cold War, Mexico's political system had been a stable one party system that basically limited the internal opposition. But since really the 1990s, opposition parties have begun to gain influence, and that probably has given some Mexicans a little more voice in their politics. Other issues that they're having to deal with in Mexico is high poverty rates, high illiteracy rates, high unemployment, and also political corruption. Some of these are just some of the causes of some of the drug trade that's coming out of Mexico. Other issues in Central America, some of this has been sparked by Mexican drug wars that basically have used former soldiers from Central American countries that have become members of the Mexican drug cartels. And young Central Americans who face high poverty and unemployment are sometimes recruited to transport or to be mules to carry drugs in and out of Mexico into other countries. When you look at the map there, um, the states that are of Mexico that are a little bit closer to the United States, you can see the number of deaths are a little higher in those areas, and certainly that has caused a lot of alarm for people in the border states of the United States, wanting to have a little more protections here against some of this violence. And number 10, Mexico and the United States disagree over how to solve some of the problems of illegal immigration and also some of the issues of the drug cartels and the drug smuggling. And this has led a lot of the U.S. citizens to feel um, that they need to have a little more protection, hence this desire to build a wall between the United States and Mexico. Uh, and number 11, the U.S. trade embargo against Cuba was basically a punishment for the rise of communism under Castro and will likely remain in effect for the foreseeable future because ending these embargoes requires congressional approval, and it's difficult to obtain that. You got to remember that in certain parts of the United States, particularly in the state of Florida, there are a lot of Republicans who at one time were Cuban exiles, and they are very concerned that they don't want the present Cuban government to get a lot of advantages economically. And number 12, there are challenges that are being faced by Honduras today. You have income inequality, gang violence, kidnappings, and also homelessness. This has led some Hondurans to try to come to the United States via traveling through Mexico. President Donald Trump, when he was in office, said that NAFTA had undermined a lot of U.S. jobs, primarily in manufacturing. And so in December of 2019, his administration completely updated NAFTA, and now it is known as the U.S. Mexico Canada Agreement, or US MECA. And it won broad bipartisan support on Capitol Hill and is now in effect starting July 1st, 2020. Thank you very much.